So, a little bit about myself first. My name is Alan Helton. I'm an ecosystem engineer at a tech startup called Momento. And it is a tech startup, so ecosystem engineer is a made-up title to sound cool. I do a lot of product work, I do developer advocacy, I do some engineering, exactly what you'd expect in a startup. I do a lot of things. I'm always busy. I farm. I'm one of those people that work in tech that live on a farm. I actually do that. I have chickens, I have turkeys, I have guineas, I have goats. This is actually a picture of my goat on my shirt as a Viking. His name is Leif Goderson, so I thought he'd be cool as a Viking. I'm an AWS serverless hero as well, so I've done a lot of space inside of AWS. I do a lot of back-end development. I do some front-end development as well, and I am a Postman leader, so I do a lot of work with APIs. Lots of fun stuff. We could talk about a lot of different things, but we're going to talk about the Postman API network. Now, what is it? Now, if you go to the Postman website, you click on Postman API network, it says the world's largest collection of public APIs. What does that mean? Is it a database? Is it a list? Is it just some long JSON array of people? Could mean anything. Really, that description isn't very helpful. I took a picture inside of Postman of what happens when you click on API network. This is the only picture I took because this is actually pretty telling of what it is. It's not a database. It's not a list. There's a lot of things on here that we can look at to see what it actually is. Now, at the top, it has a list of actions in here, publish. So it's actually things that you can do to help yourself get discovered to get more users. And down below, it has this list of recent updates. It's an activity feed, which I know we're all familiar with because everybody here has seen a social media network before. It has reactions, it has comments, it has ways to click through and discover new things. It literally is a social network, but for APIs. Super cool, right? We like APIs, we like social networks, very 2025. Now, what you might not know is that everything marked in Postman as public is on the network. I've talked to a whole bunch of people about the Postman API network that have no idea that they're on it at all. But if you have something that's public, you're there. And what happens when everybody's there, but a lot of people don't know? Well, it's really hard to find something. It's hard to stand out if you have, I think we saw in the keynote today, 18,000 different companies on the network with 100,000 APIs on it. So what do you have to do to make yourself discoverable? Now, what I have here on the screen, hopefully all the millennials will know, this is Where's Waldo for Americans. When I was doing some research on this, I Googled Where's Waldo, and all the results came back as Where's Wally. And I was like, well, when did that change? I definitely remember it being Where's Waldo. But it turns out Where's Wally was originally the first one in Europe, and when it came to the United States, they thought, that's not going to do well, we'll name him Where's Waldo. So the gist behind Where's Waldo is they put this little guy with a red and white striped shirt and a red hat, black glasses, in these scenes of chaos. Here's our space scene of chaos. He's in there somewhere, but he doesn't stand out, does he? It's not very easy to find Waldo. It's literally the point. And this is what happens when everybody gets put onto the Postman API network, but you're not doing anything to stand out. So I'm taking a drink of water. I'll let you guys look and try to find him for 5 more seconds. Did you find him? There he is. He is there. He is there. It's still hard to see, but that's literally the point of the slide. So we're going to talk about 2 different types of ways to stand out on the network. And the first one we're going to talk about is the table stakes. If you do these things, I'm going to be honest, you're not going to stand out. Just these things. It's not enough. If you don't do these things, we'll leave it at that. Leave it at the face. So what are the things that you have to do at a minimum to start standing out? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up easy auth. I'm going to start you off here with a personal anecdote of me trying to integrate with any new system, any sort of API. The most frustrating thing for me when I'm trying to integrate with something new is not being able to get auth right. I hit send, 401. Try something else, hit send, 401. Try something else, hit send, 401. Try one last thing before I give up, 403. Still an auth error, different, progress. I'm gonna keep trying. But the point there, if I can't get in the front door, I have no trust that the house is gonna be nice. If it's hard to authenticate, I've already lost trust in what I'm integrating with, that the rest of it's probably not gonna be good. So what's easy auth? Postman provides an actually really slick way to get potential customers or existing customers to authenticate with your requests with minimal effort. So it's cool if you go in and you set up easy auth. It looks at your base URL. That's Momento's base URL. We actually have 8 base URLs. We're region-based. And what happens when you put that base URL in there, Postman says, hey, I know that. That's Momento. Specifically, if we look at it here, that's US East 1. I even know what region it is. And when it does that, it gives you a little button that says, set up new authorization. And when you click that button, you see instructions that I wrote, personally me, inside of Postman, that brings you to Momento's website, that walks you through step by step, here's how you get that API key that you need to make that request successful. You get that, you walk through the instructions, you come back, has a little dialog box, says give me your API key, you paste it in there, and then Postman knows where that goes. It knows, do I put that in a header? Do I put that in a query param? You don't need to know, at least not right now, so I'll do it for you. And it goes in and does it automatically. So you can go in and get to that first 200 OK really as quickly as possible. So easy auth, super, super nice. It is region-based, you could say it that way. Really, you're not just limited to one. So for Momento, like I said, we have 8 regions. I set that up 8 different times for all the 8 different base URLs, and it all points you to the correct thing. Super cool, super nice. The next thing, and probably the most obvious one, fill out your public profile. Now, it's not just you, right? I'm not talking about the individual developers inside of Postman. Do that too. But for your organization, for your team, set up the profile. There's a lot of things that are on there that are obvious when you're looking at it. It's obvious when said, but it's not necessarily obvious if you haven't had it said to you. This is your first chance at branding. This is your first chance to start building your identity with potential customers. That squirrel is the logo, or the mascot for Momento. It's like all of our identity in that squirrel. But it also has, on this page, our website, our social media handles. It has a quick, what do we do? What is it that we do? What can you do with us? And it also has everything that we've done inside of Postman right there at the very front. So people can see, I know what you do, and yeah, I can actually see that you're pretty invested inside of Postman as well because you have a lot of content. So fill out your public profile. It's actually more important than you think. The next thing I want to talk about is verification. We've all seen the blue badge. We've seen it on Twitter, aka X, see it on LinkedIn, see it on Instagram, see it everywhere. But this one's different because this is not a pay-to-play verification. This is a badge that shows you did your due diligence to do things right. Momento is actually, I think, one of the first 3 verified publishers on the Postman API network, and it was actually really not that bad. If you do the things that we've already talked about, if you set up easy auth, if you fill out your profile, if you have a public workspace, There's a couple more smaller things in there, but you're queued up to get verified. You'll work with a team, and they'll get you that badge. Builds trust. It helps you rank higher in search results. It gets you featured inside of the API network without having to do anything. It's really just pretty slick. They know who you are inside of Postman, and they'll throw you some bones. Now, there's one thing in here. I copied this little bulleted list from the website for what it takes to get verified. And that bottom one we haven't really talked about. At least one well-documented collection and workspace. I don't like that wording because that, to me, is incredibly subjective. What on earth does well-documented mean? Is it complete? Do I have everything listed? Do I have funny jokes in my landing page? Could mean a lot of things. And so to show you how to stand out, we're going to look at an example. I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but we're going to look at Stripe. I went to Stripe's public workspace, and I started scrolling. And then I continued scrolling. And then I continued scrolling. And then I continued scrolling. And I kept scrolling. Eventually, I just gave up because there's so much there. That doesn't help me. As a developer, there's no way I'm going to find what I need. But is it well documented? It's complete. It's 500 endpoints there. That's everything that you could do. Is that good? Is that well documented? Is that what we're looking for? To me, that's certainly not how you stand out. That's just the list of everything. And to understand in kind of a different way, we're going to look at a real-world example of what this is. This is like going to the hardware store. If I want to go and build a shed, which I've done because I live on a farm, I can go to Lowe's, and I can go and I can get sheet metal. I can get lumber. I can get sheet metal screws. I can get angle brackets. I can get cement. I can get rebar. I can go on. There's actually a lot of pieces in a shed. But the thing is, I can go and get everything that I need there. But I don't know always where that stuff is. I'm always walking around Lowe's with the app out, sheet metal screws. Okay, 30, aisle 35. Dang it, I'm on aisle 1. Go all the way to aisle 35. Get that. Okay, now I need cement. Well, dang it, that's back on aisle 1. Go back and forth and back and forth. It's not really easy. It's all there. And you know who does really well in situations like this? People that think they know better than you. And we all know those people. We're all developers in this room. Everybody knows people like that. They don't need help. They love it. That's what they do. Now, for the rest of us, myself included, if I'm looking to build a shed, I need a little bit more guidance. I need something that tells me, here's everything packaged up, and here's step 1 through 453. I need IKEA. I need to go buy the shed pack at IKEA. I actually am pretty sure that is the real thing. But what's the difference here? Like, why really am I going to IKEA versus going to the hardware store when I'm trying to buy a shed? When you boil it down to it, that 500-page instruction manual is telling me a story of how to build a shed. And story really is how you stand out on the public API network. Now, I'm going to read this quote. I don't ever like legit reading off the slides, but this one's important. Storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. I wish that was my quote. It's from Robert McKee, storytelling legend. There's a lot of power in this. And there's a lot of this power that you get directly into your workspace. Let's look at mine. This is my workspace. I own the Momento public workspace on the Postman API network. And there's a lot of things in here. It looks very different from Stripe, I'll tell you that. And again, no shade at Stripe. They don't need to stand out. They're Stripe. Everybody knows who that is. Not everybody knows who Momento is. So we have to do some tricks to stand out a little bit better. We're going to look at some of these key components, and then we'll go into them a little bit more. So we go in here and we look, and I have a bunch of collections. And the collections are prefixed with different types of collections that I have set out. This is not just my list of endpoints. There's also in here flows, which we saw in the keynote today, something that's pretty cool. Again, we'll talk about this in a minute. We also have updates. What happened? What should I be excited about? Why should I be excited about it? What's new? How often am I posting things? And then another thing on here, well, it's not on here, it's not pictured, is notebooks. And we saw notebooks, again, in the keynote today. It's actually a very cool way of storytelling. We'll talk about those. But first, we're going to talk about collections. Because collections are the first way inside of Postman that you had the opportunity to tell story. And you can actually tell it in a few different ways that are all very meaningful in their own ways. So you can actually build full functional demos of your apps and of your services completely in a collection. I did this a few weeks ago when we released a long polling endpoint in Momento. Long polling, if you aren't familiar with it, is just a type of request response that the server holds onto the request until there's data to return. If you're familiar with Amazon, this is what happens when you attach a Lambda function to SQS. It kind of just reaches out to that queue. Whenever something enters the queue, it triggers the Lambda function. Same deal, same thing. And a lot of people kind of have a hard time understanding, like, it's 2025, why on earth would I use that? And so I thought, well, you know what, let's show you. Let's show you why you would use that. And so I actually built a collection on here. Find me later, we'll go through this demo. It's actually really cool, where you run it. It uses the Postman visualizer to show a web page, and then you can actually send reactions from like your phone that scroll up across the visualizer in real time. It's really, really neat. So it sells that story. It shows exactly what to do. You can also have collections that show workflows. An integration with a third party is rarely one endpoint. Rarely. If it is, it's probably not a very good integration or very shallow. It's often 8. Don't quote me on that. It's more than one. And often it's more than one that rolls into this one, take data from that other one, do something if that data is A, do this other thing if it's B. It's a complex workflow. It's a business practice where you have to do things conditionally, and it depends, right? We're all developers, we've heard that before, we've all said it. Now, it kind of segues me into domain-specific examples. So Momento, I didn't really talk about what Momento does. It's a very low-level service provider. We provide APIs for caching and for event messaging, for sending data back and forth. And really, fundamentally, we have like 5 endpoints total. That's it. It's not a lot of things to work with. It's definitely not Stripe, right? It's not 500 endpoints. But because it's so low level, you can do anything with it. You have 500 use cases. And what you do to stand out in the public API network is really meet customers where they are. We do a lot with gaming and media and entertainment because what we do is fast and it needs to be real time. So we build out these collections that are domain specific to gaming and media and entertainment to show you that, yes, we're doing data management, but here's how you would use it in your specific use case. So building up these collections and use cases that people can relate to is actually a really, really good way to sell that story and get people to understand that, hey, I could use that for my problem. A lot of people hear caching and they think, oh, well, I'm just gonna front my database with it. No, you could build instant messaging with it. You could do a lot. You can build an entire game. You could build League of Legends on Momento. So a lot of different ways that you can treat collections to really sell your story in different ways and reach your customers where they are. Let's talk about notebooks. Notebooks are new, brand new. In fact, I think you're actually looking at the first one on the network. I think I might have the first notebook. I think I got that accolade. And what's really cool about it is you, thank you. What's cool, it's basically a blog. Like that's really what it is if I had to trivialize it. And I'm hesitant to say it that way because the guy that owns it in Postman's sitting right there and I just don't want to insult him. But it's a way to sell your story very interactively. Why is that, or how is that? It's through a couple of different, actually very cool mechanisms that they have built directly into the notebook. If you've ever used things like Jupyter notebooks, I really need to watch my tongue with you in the room. You have story, you have words that describe what's happening or set a stage. And then you actually have an interactive piece. I can embed requests from my collections that we've already talked about, my use case specific collections, directly in here. I set up a story. Here's what you're doing. In this notebook, we're building a game lobby where people can just come in and bounce out. It's like you're waiting for a game to start. And you can set up variables. You can use those variables in actual real requests to say, hey, hit send and see what happens. And that interactivity is actually a really, really big deal because that's going to increase engagement. It's a lot more than a blog post that I'm skimming in my free time. I'm reading it, and then I'm prompted with, here, do something. And I'm like, oh, well, let me go back and actually read it for real this time and build that story up. And people actually connect with it a little bit better. So you can do requests. You can do code, actually show real code that actually runs. And you can set variables. It's all contained inside of a notebook. It's very cool. It's really neat. And so the thing, we didn't show notebooks in my Momento public workspace because they don't live there, at least not right now. Notebooks are attached to individuals. Individuals are telling the story. The company's not telling the story. I'm telling the story here. So if you want to go find this one's actually on my profile, not the company's, which is why you should always fill out your public profile. Okay, next, flows. I did not make this one. Nobody builds flows better than Postman builds flows. That's Sterling. You've probably seen him around. Those yellow glasses are pretty iconic. And what's cool about flows is that they're just reachable by everybody. It's not just a developer thing. And what's cool about them beyond that is that they show multi-step processes. They show real integrations and real code, kind of, in a UI, an actual flow of this is the logic that happens when you do this thing. So if you wanted to show a full integration or a full business process, you get to do this whole visual representation, which I was an architect in a previous job, and I had a lot of meetings with people that did not like to look at code. It was product people, it was executives, it's everybody that hates looking at code. And I drew these. I'm sure some of you in here have done the same thing. Diagrams. How does it work? This does that, and it actually works. That's also the code. That is actually the thing that runs and works. So you can get people from your product team in here and looking at it. You can get people from your dev team in here and building them. You can get your QAs in here building them. What's neat about them is that they're not linear. They have conditional logic, which is something that you can do in collections, but you have to do it in code and like the post request script that looks at the response and then says, well, set the next request to this one over here. It's actually really hard to follow, and you really have to be an expert to make that work the way you want it to work. What's nice about this is you could say, hey, if this fails, do this other thing. Or if this list comes back with n number of results, go process them over here. Do it this way. So you get a lot of conditional logic. You get branching flows, which is how software is built. It's not linear. Software is never linear. Another cool thing, once you build a flow, you can reuse it, like in perpetuity. Perfect example. Not these. But let's say send notification, right? If I'm talking to a product person and we say something fails, so we're going to send a notification to the user. The product person says, great, that's all I need to know. I can build the send notification flow that loads the user from the database, that looks at their preferences, says, I prefer text messaging, so I use the Twilio request and send them a message. Or if they prefer emails, maybe I'm using SendGrid and sending over there. I've built that flow out one time, and I can use it in all my future projects, roll it up into one little send notification block, and just drop it in there. So all those little magenta E1s are things that do multiple steps, and they're reused. And they accelerate your development, and they accelerate your storytelling in the future because you've already done it once, and you can do it over and over again. Updates. The social media part of the network. This is literally a news feed. Has anybody here heard of Facebook before? Thought so. It's that. I built something. I released something new. This was my announcement when we launched long polling. It was really exciting because that's a really big deal. I can use HTTP. I don't have to use any SDKs. I can use it on IoT devices now. I can do a lot of different things. The accessibility just got really, really high. And you should use it too. So I did this, which is great because it's eye-catching. It looks like ChatGPT wrote it, but I did. Doesn't matter if you did. Some people do it and they love it. But what's cool is that I can say, this is what I did. This is new. This is exciting. This is what you should be excited about. And I can link to references. I can say, and this is how you can try it yourself. I can link to entire collections. I can link to individual requests. I'll probably in the future be able to link it to notebooks. Can't right now, not that I'm aware of. And then you can also see that the hype is real, right? People come in and they see and they react, they comment. What can I do with long polling? That comment is actually from Noah right there. He said, why would I use that? So that's when I built that demo. And so that dialogue that we had actually led to a legitimate demo collection in my workspace. And like I said before, and like we saw in the keynote, posting updates leads to discoverability, which leads to people using your product, which leads to more money, which leads to profit. So this goes when I click on API Network inside of Postman, it brings you that global feed. My stuff was right there at the top, like literally number 2 and number 3 at the top. For my small tech startup of 20 people, I'm at the top of a global feed. Very, very cool. Great way to tell your story, to get your branding in front of people that would have never seen it otherwise. Okay, lots of different things, lots of stuff in there. But those really are just pieces, right? You do all those things, but you still have to weave them together as a story. Those are just things. Storytelling, not easy, really. Any parent will tell you that. It's really not easy. But there's ways that you can enhance your stories, enhance your creative ability to sell something with a few tips. Use colorful language. I'm sure you've heard me many times in this talk say things like absolutely, fantastic, wonderful. These are all emotional words. But you know who does colorful language better than anybody I've ever seen? People on food shows. Let's take an example on that one. So when you see a chef presenting their food to a judge and they say, what you have in front of you is a risen yeast dough with a pulverized tomato flame-seared on the oven. On top of that, Parmigiano Reggiano cheese with manchego and mozzarella. And on top of that, chiffonade sweet Italian basil. You know what they just described? Pizza, margarita pizza. Colorful language makes it so much better. It makes it so much more appetizing, and that really goes the same with what you're doing in the API network. Be colorful, use adjectives. And that leads me to my second point of being consistent. Now, being consistent actually could apply to a bunch of different things, and I do mean it in a couple of different ways. Be consistent in how you're using your language. What you're doing To really quote Ryan Reynolds from last night, if you guys saw that, is you're building your identity here. You are establishing emotional, investment. By going in here, being funny, being quippy, being on brand over and over again. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to go in and build a use case collection that is full of colorful language, describes a pizza exactly how I just described it. And then a week later, post something that has nothing, or says, we launched this. And then 2 weeks later, come back and do one kind of half-hearted, come back another 2 weeks later, full of color again. It's inconsistent, it's confusing. And people aren't gonna be going and really buying your story if you're inconsistent with how you're talking to them or being on brand. Now, being consistent also refers to the frequency that you actually post and create new things. Like I said before, Momento has 5 endpoints total. We're not making any new ones. We're not innovating on different ways you can add data to a cache. It's getting faster, sure, but it's not new ways. But what we can do is we can continue to create new use cases and bring our products closer to these different verticals. So I can set a challenge for myself. I'm gonna create a new collection every week. Every Wednesday, I am gonna post something new to keep things consistent, to keep getting my story out there, to keep showing up in that news feed. Get people to get eyes on you. There's some rule where people aren't gonna remember something until they hear it or see it 7 times. So if you're consistent and consistently up there, that 7th time, people are gonna be like, okay, what on earth is Momento? They keep having new things up there. Let me click it and check it out. As a tech startup, that's exactly what you want. That's like literally what you want. And it really goes for all of us as well. The last tip that I have here is to be relatable. My wife is not in tech. Now, I've been in tech for a while, 15 years, and she has, by osmosis, learned some tech things. But if I go home and I say, I made the coolest tool on my MCP server today, she's gonna say, what? What? You have to have stories that are relatable. We've all seen the hardware store, just in this talk, right? We all understood that Stripe is a hardware store. And we've all seen IKEA. We've all, made a shelf or made a chair from IKEA. We understand that. What I didn't do is use a bunch of farm references and talk about chicken crops and talk about how my different turkey breeds react differently to different stimulus, because that's not relatable. Are there any other farmers in here? Let's talk after this. But what I did do is create story around things that we do know. Hardware store, pizza. I think there were a couple other ones in there. So let's revisit Waldo. Waldo decided, you know what, it's time to stand out on the Postman API network. He's gonna set up Easy Auth. He's gonna go in and he's gonna get verified. He's going to create collections that illustrate use cases and build demos and show advanced workflows. He's going to tell a story consistently. He's going to figure out his brand identity, and he's going to consistently show it over and over and over again. And when he does that, he's going to be much easier to find. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed.